You've found just stories, simple, heartfelt moments from real lives, stories that remind us how connected we all are through love, loss, and hope. Get cozy. The stories are about to begin. Sunlight, penetrating through the thick fabric of the curtains, filled the room with soft light. The day promised to be clear and warm for the first time in a long, foul week. Helen stretched sweetly in her warm bed, opened her eyelids, and a light smile flickered on her lips. She turned her head, intending to wake David, but the spot next to her was already empty. From the depths of the apartment came the captivating, enticing aroma of freshly brewed coffee. They say it's true. There is no aroma more beautiful than morning coffee. David sat on a small sofa, engrossed in reading a book. Good morning? I don't know. Maybe I just slept well, or maybe my heart is so anxious it won't let me rest. What are you so anxious about? Everything will work out for the best, David tried to reason with his wife. Helen certainly had a reason to worry. Today they were expecting their son, and not just him. He had called the day before, saying he would come for the weekend, but not alone, with a girl. This came as a complete surprise to his parents. They hadn't suspected that Alex had a steady companion, but their son immediately clarified. This wasn't just a girlfriend, but his fiancée, and their relationship, according to him, was more than serious. This was a real surprise for both parents. They couldn't imagine their son, at 21, deciding to tie the knot so early. However, they weren't going to object or dissuade him. After all, they themselves had gotten married while they were fifth-year students. Alex called again, saying that he and Sarah had already left and would be in the city around 5 in the evening. Helen had booked a table at a restaurant in advance. Initially, she was inclined to cook dinner herself, but then, upon reflection, decided that such an event deserved a special approach, and dinner at a restaurant would be appropriate. Their family lived modestly, but without need. They didn't deny themselves necessities, but didn't indulge in excesses either. For the last few years, a significant part of the family budget had gone towards paying for Alex's university tuition. In addition, they were saving money for their son's future housing purchase. The children will arrive around 5. Will you meet them? Helen asked her husband. I need to do my hair, otherwise I risk not being ready. Of course I will. Stop worrying so much, it's not royalty arriving, David tried to reason with his wife. But Helen continued to be anxious. She was tormented by the anticipation of the first meeting with her son's fiancée. There seemed to be no visible reasons for concern, but the feeling of growing anxiety wouldn't let go. Closer to 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Helen dialed the restaurant's number to clarify the dinner details once more. She put the phone down on the table and, fixing her gaze on her reflection in the mirror before which she sat, became lost in thought about the relentless passage of time. It seemed like only yesterday her little Alex was taking his first steps. Then, the first phone call, the first grade, and now she was waiting for him to visit with his fiancée. It was quite possible that this girl would indeed become his wife. And then there would be children. Her grandchildren. Grandchildren, she said aloud, as if tasting the word. What grandchildren? I'm only 43. This thought caused almost horror. I can still essentially become a mother, and here I am already a grandmother. The sharp ring of the phone interrupted her thoughts. It was Alex calling again. Yes, son? Hello. This is not your son. I'm a paramedic. We're taking him to the hospital. The minibus he was in a serious accident. A strange, sharp male voice said on the phone. Helen couldn't process what she heard. What accident? Who was taking whom? What nonsense? She had just spoken to Alex an hour ago, and everything was fine. Madam, can you hear me? The same voice asked again. Excuse me, we are heading to City Hospital 5. Can you come? Who are you? Her mind refused to accept reality. Where is my son? I understand this is difficult for you, but right now the main thing is to pull yourself together and come to City Hospital 5 immediately. He may need a blood transfusion. Please try to hear me, the voice urged persistently. Yes. "We'll come now," Helen said almost in a whisper, hanging up the call. She looked at her reflection, and it seemed to her that in those moments she had aged at least 10 years. Her husband entered the room. "Who were you talking to? Alex again? He must miss you. Don't worry. You'll see him soon. Then you can talk your fill." David smiled, and only at that moment did he notice the strange stupor on his wife's face. "David, we need to go to Hospital 5. They're taking him there," Helen whispered barely audibly. "Who are they taking?" "Alex," she repeated in the same quiet voice. "Why to the hospital?" David couldn't understand at all. "Accident," was all Helen could manage, and suddenly jumping up from the chair, she began to pace the room. She feverishly pulled things out of the closet, scattering them on the floor. "Helen, wait. Please, stop. I don't understand anything. What happened?" "He will need a blood transfusion." She suddenly froze in the middle of the room. "That means it's bad, doesn't it?" Helen looked at her husband with a pleading, hopeful look, wanting with all her heart to hear that it wasn't so, that it was just a formality, or something like that. But David was silent. His face changed sharply. He walked over to his wife, hugged her tightly, and said quietly but firmly, "Pull yourself together. Now more than ever, we need to collect ourselves. Go to the hospital. Find out what's wrong with Alex. Please, focus." Helen looked at her husband and, as if obeying someone else's will, went to get dressed. Chaos reigned in the emergency room. Many people, shouts, groans, gurneys with injured, someone's inconsolable crying. Medical staff rushed through the corridors. Helen held tightly to her husband's hand, afraid of losing consciousness. "Do you see Alex?" she asked, looking around. "No, I don't. We need to ask the nurse. She probably knows." David resolutely headed towards a nurse who was trying to calm a crying woman, explaining something to her. "Excuse me, please. We were told our son was brought here. Can we find out about his condition?" "Is he from the accident?" the nurse asked matter-of-factly. "Yes." "Then wait. The doctor will come out shortly and call you." David returned to Helen, relaying the nurse's words. But about half an hour passed, and the doctor still didn't appear. David was about to approach the nurse again when a doctor emerged from somewhere down the corridor and called out loudly, "Miller's here?" "Yes, that's us," David exclaimed, pulling Helen with him towards the doctor. "Come into my office," the doctor invited and walked quickly down the corridor. They entered the office. David seated Helen on a chair by the desk while he sat on the couch by the wall. "Doctor, please tell us what's wrong with our son?" David asked impatiently. "I'll be direct. The condition is serious. Your son was in the front seat of the minibus. The impact was on his side. Fracture of the right collarbone, 2 ribs on the right, a crack in the tibia. But that's not the main thing." The doctor paused and looked questioningly at Helen. "Is your wife able to process information? Speak." "She is in shock. The main problem is a fracture of the base of the skull and a severe concussion. We've sent him for an MRI now to assess the state of the brain. The greatest danger is possible hematomas. What can we do now? Maybe you need money? Name any sum, we'll find it." "No, nothing is needed for now. The only thing you can and should do now is pray. Everything else is our concern." "I understand. We'll wait for news," David said quietly, looked at the doctor and added pleadingly, "Save him, please. We are doing everything possible, believe me." "And Sarah?" Helen's quiet voice suddenly broke through. "There was a girl with him. Sarah, his fiancée. What about her?" The doctor shifted his gaze from David to Helen. "I don't have information about the girl. You need to ask the nurse on duty." David gently led Helen towards the office door. Helen could barely move her legs. A passing nurse kindly offered to give her a sedative injection. "Yes, please do. Maybe it will help her come to herself a little," David agreed. After the injection, Helen did feel some relief. "David, did the doctor say when to expect any results?" she asked her husband. "They said to wait. We need to find out about Sarah." "Yes, of course. The girl probably got hurt too. We need to inform her parents," David agreed. He went over to the nurse to inquire about the girl's condition. Excuse me. The girl died. She was the only victim of this accident. I'm sorry, the nurse said quietly and hurried away from David. She looked as if she was personally to blame for what had happened. David felt completely devastated. He didn't know how to break this terrible news to Helen. She had just started to recover from the shock she had experienced. He approached the nurse again. Please tell me, where was she taken? She probably had a phone. We need to somehow inform her parents. Don't worry, the police will contact the relatives. Yes, of course. David returned to Helen, who was talking to another woman in the meantime. This woman's husband was also in that minibus and was injured, but not as severely. Did you find out about Sarah? Helen turned to her husband as soon as he approached. David shook his head negatively. What? She wasn't brought here? No, she was taken to Hospital 9. The injured were distributed, some here, some to 9, the woman explained. David inwardly breathed a sigh of relief. He would definitely tell Helen the truth about Sarah, but not now. Closer to 10 in the evening, the doctor appeared again and called David. His appearance did not bode well. David understood that there would be no good news now. I have bad news, the doctor began. David tried to read the doctor's name and patronymic on his badge. The letters blurred before his eyes. He couldn't focus. Doctor, please, tell me what's wrong with my son. Uncertainty and waiting are the most agonizing. He's alive, yes, alive. But the head injury is very serious. And now what? Is it treatable? You see, right now we are powerless. The situation is extremely unusual. Surgery is too risky. He might not survive it. The only thing we can do now is maintain his life support. How long do we wait? A minimum of a couple of days. Then we will monitor the dynamics. And us? Go home? They won't let you see him now anyway. Try to calm your wife down. She needs rest. And come back tomorrow around 11. There's no point in coming earlier. Okay, I understand. Thank you. David with great difficulty persuaded Helen to go home. She flatly refused to leave. What if he gets worse and we're not there? Listen, we can't help him in any way. The doctors are there. They are controlling the situation. And you need to get some rest. Please, don't argue. Let's go home. We'll come tomorrow, the doctor said by 11. 3 agonizing weeks passed. During this time, the situation practically hadn't changed. Alex was still in a serious condition, in an induced coma. Helen was deeply distressed by the news of Sarah's death. She couldn't imagine how she would tell her son about it when he regained consciousness. Today, Helen arrived at the hospital to see her son only by lunchtime. She had been urgently called to work. She worked as a designer in a small firm. She had asked her management for leave and taken an unscheduled month-long vacation. The situation demanded it. For some reason, Helen was convinced that Alex would soon recover, and then he would need maternal care and constant attention. But Alex's attending physician, Dr. Robert, merely shrugged, saying they had to wait. The parents didn't understand what exactly they were waiting for. Their son just lay there, and it seemed nothing was happening. Helen resolutely knocked on Dr. Robert's office door. "May I?" she asked, opening the door slightly. "Yes, of course, come in." The doctor rose from his desk and sat on the sofa, inviting Helen to sit next to him. "We need to have a serious talk, Dr. Robert. Tell me honestly, what should we do? What are Alex's prospects? We can't just sit and wait, doing nothing. You must understand my state." "I understand your state, but for now, unfortunately, I can't offer anything. We are not a clinic in the capital, unfortunately. In this condition, no one will allow him to be transported such a distance." "I understand, but how long do we wait? And most importantly, for what? Does my son have prospects of coming out of this state in the near future? Helen, I cannot give you any guarantees or promises. Understand, medicine is a precise science, but even in it, there is room for the inexplicable, for a miracle, if you will. And I believe in this miracle, because with medical methods, alas, we are powerless. Can I see him? Of course you can. Why are you asking?" Helen left the office and headed to her son's room. Alex lay on the bed, as still as he had been yesterday, and a week ago. Helen sat down beside him and took his hand. Scenes from the past swam before her eyes. Little Alex, their trip to the dolphinarium where he swam with dolphins, how he won the swimming competition, taking first place in the region. She desperately wanted to cry, but there were no tears left. In these 3 most terrible weeks, she had cried out everything possible. At that moment, Helen was overcome by wild despair, despair that was impossible to control. Her hands trembled, her legs felt like cotton, her vision blurred. It seemed another moment, and she would lose consciousness. Helen sharply jumped up from the chair, almost falling, but managed to grab the edge of the bed and sank back onto the seat. Something must be done, the thought ran through her head. But what? The exhausted mother didn't know whom to turn to, where to run. Leaving the hospital gates, she slowly trudged towards home. She suddenly had an unbearable craving for coffee, the aroma of which wafted from the street from the nearest coffee shop. She resolutely turned towards it. Entering inside, Helen saw that all the tables were occupied by couples, and felt a pang of disappointment. Just as she was about to leave, she noticed a lone man at a table in the far corner. "I won't be too much of a bother if I drink coffee in 10 minutes and leave," Helen thought, and confidently headed towards the table. "Excuse me, is this seat free? May I sit at your table? I'll only be here for 5 minutes. I'll drink my coffee and leave right away," she addressed the man, who was absorbed in examining some papers. The man raised his head and nearly dropped his documents in surprise. "Helen!" Helen looked at the man in bewilderment. How does he know me? The thought flashed. "Excuse me, are we acquainted?" Helen asked uncertainly. "Helen, don't you recognize me?" The man smiled. Helen began to look closely at his face. He looked about 40 or 45, wore expensive glasses, and had thick dark hair touched with gray. He was dressed expensively, very expensively even. Among her acquaintances and friends, there were no people with such a level of wealth. "Maybe a client?" Helen thought, and asked aloud, "Excuse me, were you a client of ours? Did you order a design project?" "No, no," the man smiled, and Helen involuntarily noted his perfect snow-white teeth. "Come on, sit down, sit down." Helen, still stunned, sat down on the chair. She felt a little awkward that she couldn't recognize the person in front of her. "So, how do you know me?" "We studied at the same institute, only I was a year ahead. Paul Davis. Don't you remember?" "Paul?" Helen's surprise was immense. "I would never have recognized you honestly. I must have changed a lot. Hopefully for the better," Paul smiled. "Of course. I'm so glad to see you. And how did you end up in our neck of the woods? Didn't you transfer and leave back then?" "Yes, I left. I came to your city on company business. I decided to walk around familiar places, have a good coffee, sit, remember student years, and look through some documents at the same time. And then this meeting. Fate, I guess." An incredible positive energy emanated from him. Even in her depressed state, Helen felt it. But Paul noticed her mood. "Did something happen? You look very upset." "Oh, Paul, better not ask." And Helen, quite unexpectedly, suddenly burst into tears, loudly and bitterly. "Can I help in any way?" her old acquaintance asked. "No, Paul, no one can help me now, only perhaps higher powers. Something terrible has happened to me." And Helen, as if in one breath, recounted everything that had happened over the past month to Paul. For some reason, it was surprisingly easy to talk to him. She even stopped crying and was able to speak quite calmly. It was strange. Helen, not used to pouring out her soul, was telling her grief to, essentially, a near stranger. Yes, they had studied together once, perhaps even been friends. But so many years had passed, so many that it seemed like it was in a past life. And when meeting such acquaintances, people usually limit themselves to polite phrases and questions without delving into personal problems. Paul listened with utmost attention, not interrupting her once, And only when Helen finished, he asked a completely unexpected question. Helen, does Alex have a father? Helen looked at Paul in surprise. Yes, of course. Why? Do you live together? Paul continued to ask what seemed to her strange questions. Yes, we're married. Why are you asking? It just always seemed to me that a father should fight for his child until the end. And where is your husband? Why are you alone in such a state walking around the city? I saw right away how upset you were. He's at work, Helen replied sadly and quietly. She had nothing more to add. It was unbearably painful for her at that moment. She herself had asked herself the same questions many times and was sure that David would be her support in finding a way out. But he somehow distanced himself, saying he couldn't help in any way. She felt ashamed to admit that in 23 years of marriage, her husband had never made an independent decision, never shown initiative. She herself had always done, decided, and obtained everything, and she was mortally tired of it. Initially, after the wedding, she hoped that David would change, that he was just still young. But time passed. Alex was born, and for several years Helen hardly noticed her husband's indecisiveness and spinelessness. But then these character traits began to manifest more and more vividly and clearly in their daily lives. They argued about it. Helen tried to influence her husband, but it brought no results, and she simply resigned herself. But now his indecisiveness and unwillingness to act were simply driving her crazy, and Helen understood that she would have to do everything herself again, otherwise no one would save Alex. Helen, don't despair. I believe your Alex will definitely recover. Where did you say this healer, Samuel, lives? Helen named the village. I just don't know which region it's in, but I should get a call this evening telling me how to get there. Okay, calm down. We won't wait until evening, Paul declared confidently, took out his phone and dialed a number. Mark, please find out which region the village of is in, and call me back in a couple of minutes. Paul's phone rang, and a certain Mark reported all the necessary information. Helen looked at Paul in astonishment. Tell me, can you take a couple of days off work right now so we don't waste time and leave immediately? I'm on vacation, starting today, Helen said slowly, almost in a whisper. She looked at her old acquaintance with such amazement that it took her breath away. But I need to pack at least some things. What things? We'll buy everything necessary along the way, Paul said clearly, in a businesslike manner. Look, if we leave right now, we'll be there by midnight. Although no, right now. So, first he showed determination, and now he's backing down, she thought sadly. Paul, I understand everything. You have your own affairs. I'll get there myself, by train or bus. Transport is running. You've already helped a lot by finding out the region. Thank you. No, not right now. Because we haven't finished our coffee yet, Paul smiled. You'll finish it. Well, you're something, she smiled back. And what about your affairs? Helen, my dear, my affairs can wait. I have people to work. The main thing for me is to keep my finger on the pulse, to be reachable. Don't think about that at all. Finish your coffee calmly, and let's go. They finished their coffee and left the coffee shop. Paul approached a car, and Helen experienced new surprise. Before her stood a luxurious business-class car. Even if we sell everything we own, the apartment and the car, it won't be enough, the thought somehow flashed. Please. Paul opened the front passenger door, inviting Helen with a gesture. Thank you. You have a very beautiful car. Yes, I like it too, he smiled back. Wait, don't you need to call anyone? Tell them you've left? No, I don't. And your parents? Dad died a year ago, and Mom followed soon after. So besides my husband and son, I have no one close. Although it's difficult to call my husband close, especially now. I'm sorry. Please accept my condolences. It's okay. I've already gotten through it. Although without parental support, of course, it's hard. I understand. My parents also passed away one after another, 7 years ago. First Mom and then Dad 6 months later. It's very difficult. Yes, Helen said quietly, looking somewhere into the distance. They drove in silence for about 10 minutes. Each was thinking about their own things, but Helen was sure that Paul, like her, was now remembering his parents. This wound, it seems, never heals. Around 11 in the evening, they drove into a small town near the necessary village. Paul suggested stopping for the night in the town, considering it inappropriate to go to the village at such a time. They found a small, cozy hotel and rented 2 single rooms next to each other. "Are you hungry?" Paul asked. "I don't even know. Kind of, yes, but not very. Let's order a glass of wine and a light salad and then go to sleep. We need to get up early tomorrow." "Yes, I agree. Wine will help me relax and fall asleep. Then go up to your room, I'll be there soon." Paul arrived about 40 minutes later. Helen had managed to shower and change into a hotel robe. "I found out everything about this Samuel. The administrator is a very talkative girl. She told me everything in detail. You need to go to him at 8 in the morning. He doesn't receive visitors earlier, but you must manage to see him before sunset. He doesn't receive visitors after that either. So I suggest leaving for the village by 7. There will surely be a queue there. People come to him not only from all over the country, but also from neighboring states. It's not a given that we'll see him tomorrow on the first try. The administrator said some people wait for 3 or 4 days. Wow. I hope we didn't come for nothing, and he can really help Alex." There was a knock at the door, and a young man about 19 years old entered the room with a tray laden with food. He carefully placed the tray on the table, wished them a pleasant meal and rest, and left. After the light dinner, the conversation continued, but Helen lay down on the bed and looked at her phone. It was 00:05, 5 past midnight. David hadn't called once. Does he really not care at all? She was almost asleep when she heard a message notification. Helen picked up the phone and read the message. "Do you have a conscience? Did you see what time it is? Is this your revenge?" She wanted to reply, but changed her mind, muted her phone, turned onto her other side, and fell asleep. At 6 in the morning, they arrived at Samuel's house. He came out literally a minute later, carrying a small suitcase. Approaching the car, the healer greeted them and quickly got into the back seat. "Perhaps you'd like to sit in the front? I can give you my seat," Helen offered. "Thank you, no need. I'm not used to taking someone else's place, and this is your place. A wife should always be next to her husband," Samuel remarked with a smile. "But we are not husband and wife," Helen objected. "This is Samuel." Paul looked first at the healer, then at Helen, and simply smiled. He liked this strange but charming man more and more. They arrived at the hospital where Alex was by the 5th hour of the day. Fortunately, Dr. Robert was there and immediately received Helen in his office. "Good afternoon. I've brought this amazing person, and I very much ask that he examine Alex right now," Helen began from the doorway, wasting no time. "Then let's go to the room," Dr. Robert said, getting up. Helen, Samuel, and Dr. Robert entered the room. Alex lay in the same motionless position. Samuel immediately headed towards the bed, gesturing for the others to wait by the door. Approaching the young man, he simply looked at him for a few minutes, then took his hand and placed his own palm on it. It seemed to Helen that an eternity passed. In reality, it was no more than 5 minutes. "Leave me alone with the young man for about 40 minutes, Samuel requested. "What are you going to do?" the doctor asked with doubt. "Don't worry, nothing dangerous or supernatural. I just need to be alone with him. Please, I beg you." Helen intervened in the conversation. "Dr. Robert, let's go out. Let Samuel stay with my son. As a mother, I don't object." "Yes, of course. It certainly won't get any worse," the doctor agreed, apparently resigned. Those 40 minutes seemed the longest in her life. It felt like a whole eternity had passed. The waiting was simply unbearable. They say it's true. Waiting is worse than the event itself. Inaction and not understanding what was happening completely threw her off balance. Finally, the room door opened, and Samuel appeared in the doorway. He looked very strange. It seemed as though he had aged literally before their eyes. Helen stared at the healer in astonishment. What could have happened in there that he changed so much? The thought flashed, but aloud she asked, "Tell me, Is there even the slightest chance for him? Looking at the healer pleadingly, Dr. Robert also asked with hope in his voice, "Well, does the young man have a chance?" "He will be fine. I need a place in your hospital for 3 days. Can you arrange that, or do I need to break something myself?" he asked the doctor with slight irony. "I think we can figure something out. Don't worry. And are you sure about your conclusion? Will he really recover?" "Not can, he will recover. He will start improving very soon." Dr. Robert went to find Samuel a free spot. Samuel looked Helen directly in the eyes. "Why are you looking like that? I told you, everything will be fine. Let's do this. You go home now, take a shower, and go to sleep. Tomorrow, please don't come here. Your help won't be needed. But the day after tomorrow, you need to come to the hospital no later than—" He quickly calculated something in his mind. 11. "Of course I can come by 7. Helen immediately agreed. "Did I say 7? No. Come by 9. That will be the most suitable time." "I'll come. I'll definitely come. Thank you so much, from the bottom of my weary soul." Helen had already moved away from the healer and was heading towards the exit when she suddenly heard his voice. "Soon your soul will sing, not suffer. You'll see," he said with quiet confidence. But Helen couldn't believe it. Paul waited patiently for Helen outside the hospital. "Well? What did he say?" Paul asked with genuine sympathy. "He said he can help. He needs 3 days. He told me not to come tomorrow, but to come the day after tomorrow by 9 in the morning." "My God, how will you get through these day and a half?" Paul sympathized. "Honestly, I have no idea. Are you going home now? Or maybe you'll stay at the hotel and go tomorrow morning?" Helen asked. "What do you mean, go tomorrow morning? I'd leave you alone in this state? Who do you take me for?" "But you've already spent so much time, I feel awkward," Helen admitted honestly. "Now that hurt." Paul pretended to be offended. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to offend, but—" Helen looked away. "Can I stay at your hotel tonight? I don't want to go home." "Of course you can. Why are you asking? Only I'm terribly hungry. Let's go quickly." Paul smiled. They got in the car and drove to the hotel. The good hotel was only a 10-minute drive from the hospital. Paul rented 2 adjacent rooms and ordered dinner to the room. "You won't object to having it in the room?" he asked Helen. "Can I ask a question in return?" Helen asked a little shyly. "Of course you can." "I'll take a shower and be in a robe. I don't have the strength to be in this suit anymore." "Of course you can. Do whatever is comfortable for you. It's fine." When Helen came out of the shower, the table was already set. Paul had ordered so much food it would have been enough for 10 people. "I think I might have overdone it a bit." "You're just hungry. That often happens when you're really craving food. It's okay. We'll eat the most delicious things." They talked until 2 in the morning, despite being terribly tired, not so much physically as emotionally. Helen didn't want to sleep at all. She felt incredibly calm and comfortable next to Paul. They talked about trifles, recalled funny stories from their lives. Paul saw how much Helen was worried about her son and tried his best to distract her from her heavy thoughts. He admired the courage of this strong woman. Not every man is capable of enduring the blows of fate so stoically. And here was a fragile woman. Although from his own experience, Paul knew that women were much stronger and more resilient than men. And who came up with calling them the weaker sex? He sincerely didn't understand. Helen fell asleep in Paul's room. He felt sorry to wake the woman he loved, and he carefully carried her to his bed while he settled on the sofa. In the morning, they went to the hospital to see Alex, exactly at 9, as Samuel had instructed. Dr. Robert met them at the entrance to the ward, and seeing him, Helen feared that something had happened in the meantime, and immediately reproached herself for allowing herself to relax. "What? What happened?" She rushed to the doctor. "Calm down, Helen. Everything is fine. Even better. Alex has regained consciousness." "How? Regained consciousness in less than 2 days?" Helen couldn't believe what she heard. "Can I see my son? Does he understand where he is and what happened?" "Calm down, he's fine, especially his head. You can see him, he's waiting for you." Helen didn't walk, but almost flew into Alex's room. Alex was sitting on the bed, and Samuel was sitting next to him on a chair. "Son, Alex, my darling." She rushed to him, hugging and kissing him, unable to believe her eyes. "How are you? Can you talk?" "Mom, don't worry, I'm fine. I'll recover soon." "Samuel!" Helen wanted to rush to Samuel to kiss him, but stopped, realizing it would be inappropriate. She fell to her knees before him, beginning to thank him. Samuel, not expecting such an impulse, raised Helen from the floor and seated her on a chair. "Helen, stop. What are you doing? You're embarrassing me." "I don't know how to thank you. You saved my son. Tell me, how much do I owe you?" "I forgot to ask about the amount." "Listen to me. You need to calm down a bit. I'll go out now and leave you with Alex. He needs to tell you something important, and then we'll talk. Agreed?" "Yes, of course. Son, what do you need to tell me? Something bad?" "Mommy, stop. I told you. Everything is fine. Listen, just don't worry and don't be scared. When I was in a coma, Sarah came to me." He saw that his mother was about to say something, and continued, not letting her interrupt. "Yes, I know she died. Don't interrupt. She asked that when you have a daughter, you name her Kathy, in memory of her. Her passport name is Sarah, but she was christened Catherine, understand?" Helen didn't understand anything. For a moment, it even seemed to her that her son had problems with his head. "Son, doesn't your head hurt?" "No, Mommy, my head doesn't hurt. Please promise that you'll name your sister Kathy. It's important for her and for me. But I'm not planning to have children. I'm 43, if you remember." "If you're not planning to, you will," Alex remarked calmly. "I don't understand anything. And one more thing. I know you're divorcing Dad, so you don't worry. I'll tell you right away. I'm not against it. I'm with you." Helen looked at Alex in shock. He loved his father and was almost always on his side. What happened? Why such changes? What was connected to this? What contributed to it? It seemed to Helen that this was a dream. "Alex, what about Dad? You always said you would never forgive us if we divorced." "Mom, that was when I was a child. I've grown up and now I understand many things differently. I know that Dad never came to my room while I was in a coma. I know everything he did and said. I know what you did. I saw everything and heard everything. Mommy, please, be happy, truly, like a woman. I won't stop communicating with Dad. He's my father, whatever he may be, and he taught me a lot. But I want you to be happy, because I love you. And now I know that for sure." Helen was crying again. Tears streamed down her face. To hear such words from her own child, already grown, who had practically been on the verge of death, was incredibly touching and moving. Helen hugged Alex, kissed him on the cheek. "Son, I love you very much. Very much. Thank you so much for these words. We'll manage." Dr. Robert entered the room and announced that Alex was being taken for an MRI. The results of the examination amazed even seasoned doctors. The hematomas in Alex's head seemed to have vanished. The fractures had almost healed, and now only rehabilitation was required, without the need for surgical intervention. "Well, you know, Samuel, I've seen a lot in my practice, but this," Dr. Robert said to Samuel, astonished. "I don't even know how to comment on this. I only have one question. If I have other such medically hopeless cases in my practice, can I refer them to you?" "You can. I help everyone I can," Samuel replied. "But it's not always like that. Sometimes a person cannot recover because they themselves do not wish to. Then no one can help." Helen stood aside, patiently waiting for their conversation to end. Samuel moved away from Dr. Robert and looked intently at Helen. "Do you want to ask something?" he asked, smiling. "No," Helen lied. Although she really wanted to ask Samuel about the pregnancy Alex had mentioned. "And I think you're deceiving me. You wanted to thank me for saving your son. How much do I owe you?" Samuel's face changed slightly. He shook his head reproachfully. "Do you think everything is measured by money?" "No, of course not." Helen felt awkward. She felt guilty. What did money do? Where would you take it to give it to God? Well, that's different. No, it's not different. I am a messenger of God, and I do his work with my hands. He's just a little behind schedule. Samuel smiled sadly. Are you sure you don't want to ask anything else? Helen hesitated, shuffling her feet, thinking about what to do, and finally decided. I do. Tell me, am I doing the right thing by leaving my husband in the past? What do you think yourself? Or how do you feel? What do you want? I want to be happy. And what do you need for that? Or rather, who? Another man, not your husband. You see, you know everything yourself. Why are you asking me? And one more thing. Helen wanted to sink through the floor with embarrassment. It seemed to her that at 43, asking about pregnancy was a bit late for a mother, let alone asking such a thing of a stranger. But she decided. Tell me, can I still get pregnant? No, Samuel answered honestly and directly. Tears welled up in Helen's eyes. I wish I hadn't asked. At least there would have been some hope, Helen thought disappointedly. You cannot get pregnant because you are already pregnant, Samuel smiled. You always get upset before you hear the end. Wait! Helen was stunned. How? Already? So, is this David's child, your husband? No, no. This is the child of the man you came with, your destiny. But that was very recently and you're already sure I'm pregnant? Does that happen? It happens. When people are destined to be together but spend their whole lives doing silly things instead of being happy. In such a case, fate uses the slightest chance to unite such people. Incredible, was all Helen could utter. Thank you so much. We'll drive you home. No need. Drive me to the train station, please. I have another journey in Russia since I'm here. And take care of yourself and your family. That is the most important thing in life. Paul drove Samuel to the station and returned to the hospital. Helen spoke with Dr. Robert and was surprised to hear that Alex could be discharged home as early as the beginning of the following week, but he would need to follow a regimen and perform a set of exercises for a speedy recovery. Helen went into her son's room. Alex was sitting by the window, looking somewhere into the distance. Son, what's wrong? His mother asked, frightened. Nothing, Mommy. I'm fine. I'm just sitting and thinking. Things like this happen in life. I was dying, almost died, and here I am, resurrected. If it weren't for you. Where did you even find this, Samuel? Helen told him how she had found out about him and where she had gone to bring him to the hospital. Yes, you know how to surprise me, Mommy. Alex, I'm going now, and I'll come back tomorrow morning, okay? I really need to talk to someone. With Paul. Did I say his name? No, but I know. Go, of course. I'll sleep. I'm very sleepy. Alex kissed his mother goodbye and lay down in bed, while Helen hurried to Paul. She kept thinking about how to tell him the news, and whether she should tell him now. Maybe she should be sure first. What if Samuel was mistaken? Paul was standing by the car, talking on the phone. Mark, this needs to be done urgently. I can't live like this after all. Yes, we'll transfer. It's not a big deal. Yes, I understand there are difficulties. Maybe. I'll definitely talk to her. Of course, go ahead. Keep in touch. Paul turned around and saw Helen approaching. Hi, they blurted out simultaneously, in one breath, and laughed. Can you talk? You first, Paul offered. I'll yield to the woman I love. It's her right. Paul, not here. It's not the right place at all. Okay. Then let's go, eat, and talk. It's not a quick conversation. It requires attention and calm. You're scaring me, Helen tensed. Don't worry, there's nothing scary. Everything is fine. Sitting at a table in the restaurant, Helen still couldn't bring herself to start the conversation. Doubts about the correctness of such a decision plagued her, but Paul looked at her attentively and waited. Helen, I am, of course, a patient person, and I've waited for you for over 20 years, but let's speed things up a bit. What did you want to say? Helen couldn't think of anything better than to recount her conversation with Samuel that day. Paul looked at Helen, not quite understanding what she was talking about. "Are you saying I'm going to have a child? A real one?" Helen laughed. "Of course, a real one. What else? And most likely it will be a girl. A girl, Daddy's little princess." "It can't be." Tears streamed from Paul's eyes. Helen had not expected this at all. A solid, adult man crying like a child. "Paul, what is it? Don't. You don't understand what this news means to me. I wanted a child so much. I always dreamed of a daughter. But to have one with the woman I love, I had almost lost hope. All I had left was the hope of being near you, winning you over, charming you. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But that you can give me a daughter. Today is the best day of my life." Helen was also crying. It was incredibly touching. It reached into her very soul. Having composed himself, Paul continued, "So, I made the right decision. Now I'm absolutely sure of it," he began, calmer now. "Helen, my darling, your divorce is just a matter of time. I perfectly understand that now you are mine alone, and I won't give you up to anyone. But we need to resolve one important issue. Where will we live? What are the options?" Helen smiled in response. She had already understood that Paul would persuade her to move to his city, and she was ready for it. "Look, we can buy a house in Yubileni Settlement, or a large 2-level apartment on Pushkin Street. Which option do you like better?" Paul named 2 well-known elite areas of her city. She hadn't expected him to be willing to move here. "Wait!" She couldn't believe it. "So you're ready to move to this city for me and leave your business?" "No one is leaving the business. We need something to live on after all. But I'm ready to move anywhere for you, even to Siberia." Paul couldn't resist, jumped up, and swept Helen into his arms. "Ladies and gentlemen, I have the best woman in the world," he shouted across the restaurant. "And I love her, and she's going to give me a daughter." The people present in the restaurant burst into thunderous applause. Someone shouted, "Well done!" Someone else, "Congratulations!" Helen blushed. "Put me down," Helen said quietly. "You're embarrassing me. You truly are my happiness." A week later, Alex was discharged from the hospital, and the 3 of them moved to Paul's city. He had a large house with enough space for everyone. Alex decided to transfer to a university in that city and live with his mother and Paul. To Helen's great surprise, Alex quickly found common ground with Paul. They often went fishing together. Helen had no idea that her life would change so dramatically, that she would decide to become a mother for the 2nd time, and that she would finally feel truly married, simply a happy woman. And even less did she expect to meet the man she had been secretly in love with during her student years, after so many years. But she would tell him about that sometime later.